Well, everyone, another Met Gala has come and gone. This year's exhibition theme is costume art, and this explores depictions of the dressed body across the Met's collection, pairing garments with artworks to explore the inherent connection of clothing and the body. The dress code for this year's Met Gala was Fashion is Art, which is a pretty broad theme and definitely up for interpretation. And I think we saw some really great interpretations and some really confusing interpretations. As a longtime fashion writer and also former art history student, I am particularly excited for this year's exhibition, and I was super excited for this year's Met Gala theme. And I can't wait to see this exhibition when it opens to the public on May 10th. From Beyonce to Bezos, let's recap this year's event and get into all of the most standout and talked about looks. I'll also share a little bit of the inspiration behind the carpet itself and the design of the Met Steps this year, as well as some moments that were really standout, some that were really questionable, and also which looks kind of won the night for me. And we'll also be discussing who stayed true to the theme and who took some really creative liberties with it, and what that all means about the current state of fashion and art. Going to do a very quick create and consume because I just feel like there's so much to get into. So, as far as what I've been creating this week, I just yesterday posted on my Instagram a short little reel. I actually have filmed a similar reel to this before, but I wanted to recreate the reel now that I'm in our new apartment. So, the reel is the NFL like Super Bowl music, like dun 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 dun, dun. And it's me though getting ready to watch the Met Gala because a lot of people call the Met Gala the Super Bowl of fashion. Now, I am actually also someone who follows football and watches the actual Super Bowl as well. I have a whole episode about it called Football is for the Girls. I can link it down below because now is definitely not the time to talk about it, I would assume. But I always just think that is such a fun little take on it. So the video is like, me pouring a glass of wine, like opening my laptop, sitting back on my couch, like getting ready to judge all of the red carpet looks. And as far as what I'm consuming this week, I saw that Taylor Swift had a new interview out with the New York Times, and they interviewed the 30 greatest living songwriters. So I watched her whole video interview. I know it's available on the New York Times website. They may at this point have uploaded it to YouTube as well. Whatever the case is, I'll link it down below. If you are a creative of any kind, but especially if you're a writer, I think you would find it really insightful. I loved what she had to say about how song ideas come to her. I also loved hearing more about some of her early influences, which is crazy to think that like Taylor Swift and I were listening to the same music growing up. She talks a lot about emo music, specifically like Fall Out Boy, Dashboard Confessional. So yeah, I really enjoyed that conversation. Definitely go check it out after this if you're looking for more things to consume. But let's get into our Met Gala recap. So I wrote down a few kind of overall thoughts and notes. First, I did just want to mention if you want to hear more about why the Met Gala exists, the history of it, how the fundraising component works, how the co-chairs component works, and like a full breakdown of the event itself. I did recently talk about all of that in episode 96 of the podcast. I can link it in the show notes in case you want to listen to that first to get a little bit more context about the event as a whole. So I'm not going to be covering that part today. Today, I really wanted to focus this episode on a recap of the 2026 Met Gala. I'm recording this the morning after the gala has happened. So I have been taking notes. I was watching on the couch all night, taking notes. I have done a lot more research this morning, trying to gather as much as I can to tell you more about the inspiration behind a lot of the looks we saw, what the interpretations were, which designers dressed which guests, and all of those details. And a few other details to know about this year's event. So Anna Wintour and Vogue Magazine are usually the unofficial hosts of the event, and then she always selects a couple of co-chairs for the event. This year's co-chairs were Nicole Kidman, Venus Williams, and Beyonce, and this was Beyonce's first time attending in 10 years, so I feel like the expectations were very high. And then Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez Bezos were the lead sponsors. This is kind of like a newish thing. And apparently they donated around $10 million for the event this year. Let's talk quickly about them and then move on. Because in all honesty, I feel like this was a big talking point of the gala this year, particularly on social media. But I actually feel like this is the least interesting part of the whole night. So there were some kind of protests and obviously people expressing their feelings about the Bezoses being involved, so heavily and so openly in this year's event. Mark Zuckerberg and Adam Mosseri, head of Facebook and Instagram, were also present. A lot of other tech people were really present as well. And I feel like that has become more common in the last couple of years. There was a lot of discourse on social media about boycotting the event and, this group that was kind of threatening to disrupt the Met Gala. I mean, as far as the live streams, I had the Vogue live stream up on my laptop and I had the E live stream up on my TV. I would say that as far as the actual event itself, there wasn't really any kind of disruption that was shown in either of the live streams. I did see a video posted by The Cut of Amazon union organizer Chris Smalls getting detained right outside of the tent area. Someone had captured that and shared it on their Instagram. Other than that, I didn't really see any disruptions on the actual carpet. And I did also just want to mention there was a group called Labor is Art that did stage their own fashion show on Little West 12th Street the morning of the Met Gala. So, if you're going to protest with anything, you might as well be creating art or putting on display some creativity while you're actually doing it versus trying to storm the tent at the actual Met Gala and having no success, because it's really hard to do that with all the barricades, security, and police presence there. And to give you my 2 cents, if a billionaire wants to donate $10 million to the Costume Institute, there are worse things that could be done with that money. Okay, let's move on and discuss the carpet itself, which is, we call it the red carpet, I guess, because it's kind of a red carpet event, but the carpet is very rarely actually red. This is the covering for the Met steps and what is inside of the tent as celebrities and guests arrive to the Met Gala. So each year they have a whole team design and install this. And I was reading on the Vogue website this year, at very first glance, when I first got a glimpse of it on the screen, I thought, oh, is this an impressionist painting? Turns out I'm wrong. They actually decided to center the decor on the concept of Northern Italian gardens, which, taking a step back and looking at it, makes a lot of sense. On Vogue, it said, drawing on Renaissance design, the goal was to create a romantic atmosphere in which guests are immersed in a scene fit for a work of art. I haven't necessarily loved a ton of the carpets in previous years. I actually really did like this one conceptually, and I thought it served as a nice backdrop to a lot of the looks for the evening. And another unique thing about this year's gala is previously, if you've been to the Met and the Costume Institute before, you may recall that the costume galleries used to be in the basement. You kind of had to go past the Temple of Dender and then down the stairs, and it was really dark and secluded and all this stuff. So one of the things that the money that's been raised from previous Met Galas has gone to is actually the Costume Institute's new Condé Nast galleries. So this is going to be the debut show in these new galleries. So this is one of the things that Met Gala fundraising money has actually funded. So at least there's a real world tangible example of where does the money from the Met Gala go. These new galleries are really exciting, and this is going to be the first exhibition in them. Okay, let's get into look by look what was happening on the carpet leading up to the Met Gala. And I am going to be sharing my opinions. My word for 2026 is confidence, and I'm really trying to be better about being honest about how I feel about things and sharing what I think, even if it's not necessarily the popular opinion. Just to give you some of my credentials, though, the way I like to critique, quote unquote, the Met Gala is to evaluate the look on a couple of different things, really think about, is it stylish, is it flattering, and also is it on theme? There are a lot of looks that are gorgeous but have nothing to do with the theme, and there are a lot of looks that at first you might be like, what the hell is going on? And then as soon as you hear the inspiration, everything clicks together. And that's one of the things I like about the Met Gala. Something that I'm so turned off by in the beginning could become one of my favorites by the end of the night, and vice versa. So that is kind of how I will organize and sort the looks. I'll tell you once we go through all of them, kind of the breakdown of how I think that all shakes out. And as far as my other credentials, I majored in art history at Barnard College. I got my Bachelor of Arts degree in art history, 2016. So I actually, studied art, and I actually wrote a lot of papers specifically about art and fashion, because that was obviously a big interest of mine. I did a whole paper about Murakami's collaboration with Louis Vuitton, among other things. So I'm actually kind of a good person to be doing this, I would say. I'm also a former magazine editor, and I've been a fashion content creator and writer for over a decade. Those are my fun qualifications. I also, if you're watching on YouTube, am a little dressed up for the occasion today. I'm wearing a vintage thrifted beaded jacket that I absolutely love. And I actually filmed a makeup tutorial before sitting down to record this podcast episode, inspired by one of my favorite beauty looks from the night, which we will get to. Okay, let's go through the red carpet arrivals. I'm going to try to cover as many people as I possibly can. I'm not going to be able to do everyone who was there, otherwise, this episode would be 4 hours long. Let's begin with Anna Wintour, who is always the first arrival. It was actually really interesting. One of the first memes of the night was Anna Wintour is an outfit repeater, so she wore custom Chanel. The first thing I wrote down was, this is almost giving like how I would dress when I worked at Free People, but in 2026. And she was really wearing an iteration that was like a callback to the look that she wore for the 2019 Met Gala, which that theme was camp. I still, to this day, feel like that was one of the best themes that they ever had. Anna is usually wearing what she wants, though, like even just as much as she can nod to the theme, she'll try to do, but she's still always going to wear what she actually wants to. And I also thought it was worth pointing out Chloe Mall's look. So she is technically Anna's successor at Vogue, who has taken over the day-to-day editorial operations of Vogue and Vogue.com, even though Anna is very clearly still involved, hence her being at the Met Gala and still being very heavily involved in all the decisions. Anyway, Chloe's dress was by Colleen Allen, inspired by the woman in the painting Flaming June by Frederick Leighton in 1895. So it's a very like marigold yellow kind of draped dress. I thought this was pretty. I mean, I feel like there could have even been more to this, but at the end of the day, I also don't think Chloe is trying to upstage anyone, especially for her first Met Gala in this role. Okay, one person who very rarely disappoints me is Emma Chamberlain. I was so impressed by this Mugler look, and the immediate vision was like, oh my gosh, this is like an impressionist painting come to life. Really an ode to Starry Night by Van Gogh, and it was almost like a dripping, melting version of it though. Like the sleeves of the fringe were dripping. She just looked like art even too while she was moving. And I'm always so impressed that Emma is so tuned into these themes. And I feel like she really does like the YouTuber community proud. The fact that she is consistently one of the very few mainstream YouTubers who gets invited to the Met Gala red carpet and who has done some hosting for the Vogue live stream in the past. I mean, I am always excited to see what she's going to wear, and I feel like she always knocks it out of the park. Next up, we had our first co-chair arrival of the night, and Nicole Kidman with her daughter Sunday Rose. This is how I learned that Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban are no longer together. I get a lot of pop culture updates from the Met Gala. Okay, so as much as I am aware of celebrity and I can recognize people and I might even know who their makeup artists are, I know very little about their personal lives most of the time. I actually really liked how both of their looks kind of felt like they were in conversation with each other, and Nicole was in Chanel. This look, apparently styled by Jason Bolden, consisted of a sequined gown crafted by the skilled hands of Chanel's atelier and requiring 800 hours of work with feathers around the hips and cuffs, all that in a deep red hue, an ode to both love and the Big Apple. Okay, I have no idea what that has to do with art whatsoever. So for me, this is another one where I think she looks amazing. Like this dress was killer. I loved the hair and how simple it was. This has nothing to do with the theme, as far as I can tell, other than the fact that it is kind of a work of art itself when you factor in all of the work that was put into it. Next on the list, Zoe Kravitz, I guess, aka future Mrs. Harry Styles. Congratulations. Again, me getting my celebrity pop culture updates from the Met Gala. So Zoe arrived with Anthony Vaccarello, who is the head designer for YSL. Typically, again, I explain all of this in the Met Gala episode, which is episode 96, if you want to go back and listen. But the way that celebrities and guests are usually invited is that a brand will buy out a table and then invite people who they think are in line with their brand and who can represent them well and who they want to dress for the event. So occasionally a designer will enter with kind of their main muse. So in this case, Zoe and Anthony walking in together. Again, absolutely love this silhouette. Not really an obvious tie-in to the theme whatsoever. Although I will say I feel like her glam was standout of the night for me. I loved that she had braids in her hair. I loved the baby hairs and how they were falling in her face in the front with that almost wet kind of drippy look. I think the glam was like on fire and she looked amazing. But again, I feel like this could have been her on any other number of red carpets. All right, let's briefly touch on Lauren Sanchez Bezos because she actually did do a nod to a theme. She did Madam X by John Singer Sargent. I actually was invited to the Sargent press preview at the Met, which was last year. They did a whole exhibition, and Madam X was very prominently featured in that gallery. Again, I actually love the reference and the idea, but the execution was still just so strange to me. Like, a lot of people were saying this looks like the Amazon version of the dress. And I agree with that. It kind of was giving like you go to Spirit Halloween and buy the costume version of something that you see, and you know it's just going to be a slightly cheap material. Maybe someone can't really tell that much from the Instagram photo, but if anyone's with you at that party, they can see the details and it's just not quite right. Like there's still something that feels a little bit try hard or like off about it. So I think she looked better than she could have looked. I feel like she's worn a lot of other strange things in the past, and I feel like she played it relatively safe, all things considered. So again, she kind of did reference the theme, but just not the best execution, I would say. Another co-chair arrived, Venus Williams, and this was such a meta interpretation that I feel like only someone like Venus could get away with. So she was in Swarovski, and this was a great designer for her to partner with for this particular look because she was referencing her own portrait that is now in the National Portrait Gallery. And I think the neckline specifically, like the details of everything, was so well done. It really did feel like art come to life in a lot of ways. And I also thought her glam was really pretty. Charlie XCX, I almost wish she was still in her brat era. A lot of people were like, oh, she's graduated from her brat era. And like, I really didn't care for this look. I saw that there was some reference to irises, maybe Van Gogh. I don't know, but just like black dress with like a little bit of adornment in the front, again, to me is not what you would wear to the Met Gala where the theme is costume art. And again, maybe this is one reason why I think there were too many themes and too much up for interpretation this year because the exhibition theme was costume art examining the dressed body in fashion. But then the dress code is fashion is art. And all of this is still pretty vague. So I feel like in some ways it is kind of hard to figure out what to wear. But even just with fashion is art, even if we just stuck with that, I feel like there could have been so much more here. So this, again, I think she looked really pretty, but I just don't think it had anything to do with the theme. Okay, Doja Cat is usually one of my favorites of the night. I thought that maybe I would sleep on this one and wake up and be like, I get it. I'm sorry, I still don't get it. So it was a really pretty silhouette. She was dressed entirely in silicone, which obviously that's a hard material to manipulate, or maybe not obviously. If you've never tried to sew a dress before, I would certainly not recommend starting with silicone. I mean, this was Saint Laurent, by the way. When she was being interviewed, there was something about a reference to being nymph-like. Someone on the red carpet was saying maybe the shock factor is that this is so pared back for her. Everything was very tonal. Everything was always like one note skin tone, very minimal. And again, I'm gonna pull the art history card because if there's ever an episode for me to pull the art history card, it's literally this one. I wrote my thesis on minimalism. Okay. I get minimalism. I really like minimalism, but this still didn't quite have like a true point of view for me. And again, I actually think like she looked amazing. I really liked her glam, but in the tie-in to this theme, I felt like there was a lot still missing, and I feel like there were more questions than there were answers. Also, as a side note, so I had the live stream on our TV, which I think this is the first year that I've actually been able to access it. Don't ask me how I found it. I will never be able to replicate having it up on the TV again, probably. But they had Sierra Miller doing some commentary, and I only know Sierra from the Traders. I have not been following much of the Summer House scandal, except that I know that Sierra seems to have been wronged in the situation. Anyway, she was wearing this outfit that was almost like Marie Antoinette vibes, Rococo, and she had a lot of thoughtful things to say, commentary wise, on the commentary. So I was really happy that she got that kind of feature, and I think she looked amazing. So that's just a sidebar. I didn't see her actually on the red carpet. And actually, speaking of Sierra, that reminded me, I thought Olandria was expected to be at the Met Gala this year from Love Island. And I saw some reporting from Steph McNeil this morning. I can link the Instagram that she made in the show notes if you guys want to go watch it, about the fact that she maybe last minute didn't end up going. And I'm not sure what the deal with that was, but I would have loved to see what she would wear. And I do think it is kind of cool to see a reality star get invited to the Met Gala. I know they don't sound like they go together on paper, but everything she's done in the year since Love Island aired, it wouldn't have surprised me at all to see her on the carpet. So hopefully, maybe we'll get her next year. Okay, moving on. Naomi Osaka. Can I also just say, I feel like the athletes crushed it this year. And this may be some athletes' only Met Gala. We are obviously just coming off of a Winter Olympic cycle where everyone is like very invested in them and they have a lot of recognition right now. That sounds so mean to say that they might not be as culturally relevant in the next few years, but I guess I just mean in the terms of who Vogue prioritizes for the guest list. I'm glad that a lot of athletes were able to attend this year. And on top of that, I feel like a lot of them crushed it. Again, maybe not some of the most over the top looks of the night, not counting this one, but even just the fact that so many of them did lean into the theme where so many more recognizable classic A-list celebrities didn't do much, I was really proud of all of them. Okay, so for Naomi's look, stunning, stunning. The designer was Robert's son, and there was a two-part outfit reveal, and I read on Vogue that it totals over 3,200 hours of handiwork and thousands of faceted Swarovski crystals in 4 shades of red that illustrate human anatomy needle by needle, crystal by crystal. So again, this is kind of a reference to the dressed body, the human anatomy component, and there are a couple of other people who chose to interpret the theme that way. So very interesting. Moving on to Sam Smith. The singer wore a Christian Cohen outfit and a Stephen Jones hat. And I heard that the inspiration for this look was Erte, who was the father of Art Deco. And Sam Smith also did a pose that apparently Erte has done before. I think that's a really cool reference. And can I just say, if you're going to wear all black to the Met Gala, do it the way they did it. Like, this was the right execution of that, I would say. And this even would have been great for camp. I feel like this would have been great for Heavenly Bodies. I mean, we could maybe even rewear this look to some extent, but I can always count on Sam Smith to deliver on the red carpet or the whatever color carpet it is. So I appreciate the effort here. Gwendolyn Christie, I missed the designer for this one, but she was wearing a literal piece of art by the British artist Gillian, which I thought was cool. And this is one of those things that, again, is this outfit conventionally, traditionally stylish? You could maybe argue no, but the fact that it was so on theme that Gwendolyn really went for it, and that I feel like she always still looks amazing and confident and radiant in everything she wears, that always wins it over for me and brings it more to the side of like, yes, this feels like the right thing to wear to the Met Gala. By the way, if you want to hear about how celebrities, including Gwendolyn Christie, prepare for the Met Gala on the beauty treatment front, I actually found out that Gwendolyn goes to Joanna Vargas to get the Diamond Glow facial before the Met Gala. And the reason I found this out was because I interviewed Joanna for my blog. So I can link that interview in the show notes if you want to go read the post to hear about like what exactly that facial entails and all of the celebrities who come in getting treatment ahead of the Met Gala. But I went in and I got the facial and I interviewed Joanna, and I was, kind of like doing this collaboration with them. And as I was leaving, Gwendolyn Christie came in after me, and I was like, oh my God, that is so crazy. And she's even more beautiful in person, if that's possible. Katy Perry arrived with this kind of strange mirrored face garment. The only thing that I could really think of as a tie-in, which I don't think she would have any way of knowing, is that the mannequins in the exhibition apparently have mirrored faces. I don't know. This was not for me. As we know, in the last year, heated rivalry really took over and had its moment. And it is kind of crazy to think about the fact that Connor Story and Hudson Williams both got invited to the Met Gala just so shortly after both of their like debut breakout roles had them really thrust into the spotlight and taking off. So I was so happy to just like see them on the red carpet, taking everything in. And I saw Connor Story arrive first. Again, did he look good? Yes, I think so, but I don't think this has much to do with the theme. I would give both him and Hudson and anyone who's a first time attendee for the Met Gala, I give them all a bit of a pass because like I would probably play it safe as well if it were my first Met Gala. Me talking like I'm going to be invited someday. Hey, never say never. But I give him credit for going a step beyond just a plain black suit. And Loki, again, like I would wear that top. If that trail in the back, that little bow at the top was a little bit shorter, I feel like I could wear that like out to dinner or something. So I think that also is a question of like, if I could wear it out to dinner, like me, just wear it out to dinner in Hoboken somewhere, like, is that a Met Gala outfit? Next up, Janelle Monáe, someone who I don't think has ever once let me down at a Met Gala. She arrives in custom Christian Siriano. The outfit is, again, this is the Met Gala. Like, this is the time to go big and to make a statement. I always will give credit to people who go big, even if it's kind of a flop or maybe not like as traditionally flattering, than people who do nothing. This was insane. At this point, by the way, Christian Siriano had joined the E broadcast, and so he was just in time to like explain the outfit. It literally had all of these crazy animatronics on it that were moving. It was robotic, but then the base of it was also naturey and sculptural. And he was talking about how the whole idea is about how AI is overtaking us, but we could also let Earth overtake AI. This commentary about art and technology, specifically the year that the Bezoses are sponsoring the gala, I think was a really interesting and kind of creative way to approach it. All of the intricate details, like every time you look at this outfit, you'll spot something new on it. It's actually insane. And again, I just thought it was so cool. Next up, Alyssa Liu was invited by Louis Vuitton. This gold medal winning Olympic athlete wore this gorgeous red dress, and I really liked the silhouette. I loved the volume in the front. I loved the texture and the movement of it. I thought she looked beautiful. I kind of wish she had done something slightly different with her hair. I don't mind her signature kind of like striped, hair dye situation, but it was in these like loose waves, which I thought looked pretty, but I feel like she could have taken it a step further to do something a little more like architectural or something beyond just what I feel like I've seen her in a lot glam wise. But as far as the outfit goes, again, I feel like she had fun with it, and I feel like it looked a little bit like art in its own right. Olivia Wilde arrived in Thom Browne. I love Thom Browne, don't get me wrong. And if you don't know, Thom Browne is the partner of Andrew Bolton, who's the head of the Costume Institute. What an artsy power couple. Like, are you kidding me? Anyway, I feel like Thom Browne won the whole gala last year. Last year's theme was Black Dandyism, and there was so much tailoring and things that went into those looks. This to me was just so beyond confusing. And I feel bad saying that, but like this look was not translating for me. I didn't get it. I just couldn't stop thinking about how uncomfortable it might have been to try to sit or like do anything in it. So this was kind of a miss for me. Okay, Gigi Hadid, who I have to say, like, continuously impresses me pretty much every single year, not just with her outfits, because obviously she's a supermodel, like she'll look gorgeous in anything, but usually she comes with the history, the receipts, the real inspiration behind the look. Even last year, she did an homage to Josephine Baker and a dress she had worn when she first arrived on the red carpet. Everyone was like, she's just in a stupid gold dress. And then when everyone heard the story, everyone was like, wow, she's so thoughtful. And like, this is why we can't jump to conclusions until we actually learn a little bit more about the inspiration for this. I have to say, I did listen to her explain this briefly on the Met Gala live stream, on the Vogue live stream, I should say. The look is Miu Miu. It references an old Miu Miu outfit. There were actually two that she kind of combined together. There's also Miu Miu branding on like the underwear. The flames kind of covered, what they needed to cover. She said that the hair and makeup takes us into romance, a night in the garden. She went no mascara. I was still kind of just missing the memo here a little bit. Like, the references weren't quite strong enough to have me really see the correlation. And I thought the look itself, while obviously like flattering on her, was just not that exciting at the end of the day. I actually don't have any notes for Rose. I just wrote I'm asleep. So I actually don't even remember what she was wearing. Sorry, Rose. Anne Hathaway arrived in Michael Kors. I think she looked gorgeous. I also loved her sleek bun and her glam. The dress, I actually, again, can really appreciate the inspiration. She and Michael Kors were talking about the inspiration with Keats' poem Ode to a Grecian Urn. It was hand painted on canvas. I thought that was clever. Christian Siriano, who was coming through, thank goodness, with the honest commentary on the live stream, while everyone else was like, amazing, beautiful for every single look. He was like, she could have worn anything. I kind of agree with him. I feel like the volume could have been turned up here by 20 or 30%. Or if we really want to get into the construction and the material of the Grecian urns, she could have done something that had a clay element to it, or that was the color of clay. The black and white is obviously very New York. It's very Michael Kors. It's kind of what you would expect him to do for her. So I see the vision there and I understand all of that. But yeah, to Christian's point, like, this could have been kookier. It could have been zanier. It could have been more high fashion, especially with how much Vogue has been leaning into The Devil Wears Prada 2 and all of the marketing surrounding it, which I still have not seen the film yet. I hope to see it in the next few days, ideally. So yeah, I don't know. I think she looked beautiful. Like, again, on paper, stunning, nothing wrong, definitely on theme. So we give her that. If the volume had been turned up another like 20 or 30%, I think she would have just been the winner of the night for sure. I wrote Patrick Schwarzenegger. For a guy, he always tries something, and that is what I respect about him. I have no details, of course, in my outline about who made his look and what it was. He had kind of just like a different elevated tuxedo with a cane. It was kind of a vibe. I appreciate that he tries stuff, you know what I mean? Okay, Lena Dunham in Valentino. This was one of the looks that I had the hardest time with this night. And I can't tell. Well, there's a couple of things at play here. And mind you, I don't really have like much of an opinion about Lena Dunham one way or another. I love the inspiration. So the inspiration is, I think, one of the most iconic Renaissance paintings, and that is Judith beheading Holofernes. And this is by Artemisia Gentileschi, one of the few like prominent female painters of the Renaissance era. And I actually just saw this painting last summer when we were in Florence. It's in the Uffizi Gallery. It really is incredible if you do get to see it in person. When I heard that was the inspiration, I was like, what? Why? How does this look tie into that? And then this is Alessandro Michel for Valentino. Apparently said that she was meant to be the blood spilling in the painting. And this is where you lose me. And this is also where, execution wise, I did not love this. I think that it was avant garde and a statement. And again, I can appreciate that about it. But at the end of the day, I didn't think it was very stylish, for lack of a better word, I mean, with Alessandro Michel involved too, I think back to Jared Leto carrying his own head. And like, you could have even done a reference to that in this too, with the beheading aspect. You could have done anything else related to the Renaissance. Like, I just think there were so many other ways that this interpretation could have played out, and I didn't love what the final look ended up being. Okay, I thought Angela Bassett looked amazing. Prabal Gurung, based on a painting called Girl in a Pink Dress, painted by Laura Wheeler Waring, and she was a prominent painter during the Harlem Renaissance, another, Black female artist who, I love this reference. I love this spotlight. I also thought the dress was really pretty. The only thing that was bothering me about it was I felt like it didn't quite fit right in the bust area. I think if that had been a little bit more, fit to her, I think it would have been amazing. I personally really loved this. I saw some people who were not a fan of this, and that I don't personally understand. That's why we all get to have our own opinions, though. Okay, Lisa came out in custom Robert Sun. It was very bridal coded, like she had this white sparkly veil, and then I was like, what is holding up the veil? And it reminded me a little bit of Lana Del Rey doing the Alexander McQueen look from a couple years back with the antlers, and I was like, what is holding up her veil? Turns out they did a 3D print of her. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm doing a bad impression of this, holding up her arms in a traditional like Thai dance position, I guess is what you would call it. They did a 3D print of her arms like that, holding up the veil. So I thought that was cool because I was like, well, here we're literally creating art on the runway. And I thought that given the mannequins inside with the exhibition and everything, it was a very cool tie in. So I really, really liked this. Okay, Heidi Klum, who is famous for her Halloween parties where she really goes 150%, for lack of a better phrase. She arrived as a literal statue inspired by the Veiled Vestal, which is a sculpture created by Raphael Monti in 1847. Even like the prosthetics on this were crazy, even down to her shoes, like, and her toes. If you actually saw photos or videos of that, it was insane. And again, like, give Heidi credit for turning the volume all the way up. And again, she is a supermodel who we already have seen her in a million gorgeous dresses. This was a really fun way to approach the theme. And again, is this stylish? Like, of course, it's really hard to call it that because you can't just walk away and wear it, but it fits the theme and like she went for it. So I give her all the credit for that. Always happy to see what Coleman Domingo is going to wear. I mean, thank goodness for him also. He's carrying the men of the Met Gala on his back for the most part. When I first looked at this, I was wondering if it was an homage to Mondrian, and because of the color blocking and everything. And the artwork that keeps coming up when I was looking up for what the reference was actually Harlequin and His Companion by Pablo Picasso. And it was a reference and an homage to this kind of diamond printed top that one of the people in that picture is wearing. And I think that is very cool. And again, I think he always just looks like amazing in all of these outfits. Eileen Gu, another Olympian, I think just stylistically, this was one of my standouts of the night. Iris Van Herpen created this dress over 15,000 glass bubbles. And the dress was blowing bubbles. I did not even understand how this worked. According to details shared by the designer, hidden microprocessors within the garment coordinated the release of pressurized gas, enabling bubbles to form and float as Gu moved. I mean, that is so cool. That to me was really also like creating art on the carpet. I also saw a quick image of someone who posted a sculpture that resembled the bubbles and the dress, but I didn't get a chance to verify that before recording. So if I can find anything about that, I'll put it in the show notes. Sabrina Carpenter wearing film. This one has grown to become truly one of my favorites of the night. This was Jonathan Anderson for Dior, and her dress was made of film strips from the film Sabrina, which, if you don't know, starring Audrey Hepburn, 1954 film. At first, I felt like this was a stretch, but thinking about it more, and I actually got a DM from one of you guys when I posted this and was like, I feel like this is a stretch for a theme. And someone was like, I feel like this is not a stretch at all. I feel like film is an art form, and this was the only look of the night, really, that acknowledged that. That really started to sink in with me more, and I've come around on it on that. There were a couple of others throughout the evening that did reference, obviously, painting. There were some that referenced archival fashion or that actually were archival fashion. But thinking about all of the other art forms like film and music and writing, those felt very like underrepresented when you actually take a step back and think about it. So I'm here for this. I will say I wasn't totally in love with the accessories. I mean, the headpiece is very like 20s when the rest of the outfit is very 50s. And then the shoes were just like a black platform heel that I feel like you could buy at any shoe store. I'm sure that they were not, obviously, but I kind of wish we had stuck with the 50s. I did like how her hair was curled and set in place. I feel like if it was just that without the headpiece, I would have even loved it more. And then she actually changed to do a performance at the Temple of Dender, and I loved that dress. I wish we saw more of this type of thing on the actual carpet. So she was wearing a Versace dress that had Marilyn Monroe and James Dean pop art prints all over it. So like super colorful maxi dress. Oh man, I don't understand why we didn't see more of this, honestly. Margot Robbie in Chanel looked beautiful. Christian Siriano said this is an Oscars dress, not a Met dress, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, she's worn more exciting things to like the Wuthering Heights premieres and the Barbie premieres, I would say. Like, I thought this was a very sleepy pick for her personally for this Met Gala. I thought Hailey Bieber looked gorgeous. I wish she had done something a little different with her glam. Like, it literally looks like the glam that she wears for everything else with her slick back bun and very minimal kind of clean girl aesthetic. I'm sure she was wearing all road. She did look beautiful. I just kind of wish she had done something like a little more playful. I don't know. She was wearing custom YSL, and this was a 24 karat gold bodice that was sculpted to her body with a long cobalt blue skirt. And apparently, she was referencing an archival look of theirs from the 60s. Again, looked really beautiful. I actually liked it with both the blue neck scarf and without. Still super minimal and very Hailey, but at least the volume was turned up more than it was for some of these other looks. Hudson Williams, thank you. Thank you for getting dressed and arriving to the Met Gala. So the heated rivalry star wore a recreation of a 1947 Matador-inspired look by Cristobal Balenciaga to the 2026 Met Gala. Absolutely loved this. Also loved that we leaned into the glam. Again, men, feel free to do this literally whenever you want. If you're ever going to do it somewhere, do it at the Met Gala. And Christina Rodolfo, who is a fellow beauty editor and writer, she actually had an exclusive interview with the makeup artist behind this look. So I can link that in the show notes if you guys want to check it out. Okay, Kendall Jenner. This is okay. This is my thing with the Kardashians, I feel like in general. Kendall is usually my favorite, I would say, because she is a fashion girl. You can argue with me about that if you want to, but out of all of them, I feel like she is the true fashion girl. Obviously, she's a model, she's very engrossed in this world, etc., etc. Again, I thought she looked gorgeous. So she wore Zac Posen for Gap Studio. This look was inspired by the classic Gap t-shirt, as explained to the Vogue live stream, and apparently was draped to look like wet marble, reimagined through this couture lens. They did a 3D scan of her body so it would look like a second skin with the leather bodice underneath, so it was kind of looked like a partial, like it was draped away from her breast, but there was actually the leather bodysuit to conceal that. I felt like her and Kylie's outfit were in conversation with each other. Kylie wore Schiaparelli, and that was a much more apparent bodice with the dress kind of falling off around her waist area. So again, kind of more leaning into the theme of the body and the dressed body that's part of the exhibition versus the fashion as art dress code. I feel like we really need to simplify this for the future. Also, once Kendall was inside, there's a different shot that Zac Posen shared on Instagram of her with these giant wings behind her. I'm like, where was this on the red carpet? Like, she and Kylie have done big appendages before. Like, I'm thinking of the camp orange and purple looks that they wore. I don't know. Again, I feel like they just really could have truly worn anything. And I'm always surprised by how, like, bland on paper it reads. Again, just being on the Met carpet gala. If she had worn this to anything else, I'm sure we would all be talking about it and lining up to buy something similar. Again, was this pretty and creative? Yes. For the Met Gala, that's where they lose me. Okay, one that I really wanted to love, but I still just am like missing something was SZA. So she was in Bode. She had a hair crown, face adornments. The whole dress was bold yellow. I'm glad she did something, but again, to me, this is bold, but not necessarily stylish. And one thing that Christian Siriano made a comment about on the live stream was, well, if you think that taffeta looks expensive, because they were talking about it. And it turns out that actually this outfit was sourced from over 100 yellow fabrics from eBay. There was also, though, some inspiration that was cited about Viennese plates. Huh? Why does SZA want to be an Austrian plate? Like, I don't understand that. Also, Chapel Roan did this last year. Like, and by did this, I mean sourced her outfit from eBay. And I thought that was such a better story and execution than this was. So I'm really sorry, but this was, again, maybe on theme a little bit. Viennese plates, though, like, How specific are we getting with this? It's like, yes, I'm the blood spilled from Artemisia Gentileschi's painting. I'm the Viennese plate from the 1800s, or I don't even know what time period, to be honest with you. I didn't get that far. I stopped when I saw that. Ugh, Emily Blunt and Stanley Tucci. What happened here? What happened here? You mean to tell me with all this Devil Wears 2 marketing and everything, this is what these two wore to the Met Gala? Ugh, I said I'm bored. Okay, surprise of the night was seeing Blake Lively. She obviously has been in conversations about things that are very unrelated to fashion for a long time now. Apparently, she and Justin Baldoni just settled out of court yesterday. And she arrived at the Met Gala. She was wearing archival Versace, very Rococo inspired. The color palette, I know a lot of people thought it was very sherbety and, not their favorite. But as far as an art reference goes, the fact that it's archival fashion and the fact that it's referencing that era of dressing, I actually thought pretty close to the theme. And as usual, she looks ridiculously beautiful. So good for Blake. Hunter Schafer, I loved this idea. She was in a custom Prada gown in reference to Gustav Klimt's Mata Primavera, which Klimt is literally one of the coolest artists of all time. I love all that stuff. Again, love this reference, love this idea, actual execution and interpretation of this. I did not like at all. And again, she's beautiful. It's nothing against her. It really is just the execution of this for me, did not land at all. I was excited to see that Tanner Fletcher got an outfit in there. They did a kind of interpretation of George Seurat's A Sunday on Le Grand Jet, which is one of the most popular paintings on display at the Chicago Art Institute. Just saw this one in October when I was there. And Ben Platt wore this outfit. Again, it was a very, very literal interpretation, but I was definitely happy to see Tanner Fletcher get a spot at the Met Gala. And also shout out to Zero Waste Daniel, who designed a look for the Met Gala this year. Super exciting, his first one. And I really loved the play on paint splatter and the splashes that went along with that. Okay, Cardi B and Marc Jacobs. I love Cardi, I really do. This was apparently an ode to The Doll by Hans Belmer. Again, I feel like this interpretation just didn't end up being my favorite. I mean, it was still out there and it was still way more personality and way more vibes and on theme than a lot of people were, but at the end of the day, just maybe not my favorite. I was also wondering if her glam was all Marc Jacobs Beauty because that brand is going to be relaunching shortly, so curious about that. Beyonce back after 10 years at the Met Gala. Oh my God. I was so excited to see her. I was so excited to see this look. She's in custom Olivier Rousteing. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that okay. This anatomical body reference, again, really ties into the theme of the exhibition about dressing the body and what that means and what that looks like. And I also saw some posts where people think that she may have been alluding to our ancestors and our ancestry with the skeleton reference, which I think also ties into a lot of her music and particularly the Cowboy Carter album. There was just so much going on here. Also, Blue Ivy was there. They usually don't allow minors. I guess they made an exception for her daughter and I guess also Nicole Kidman's daughter, maybe just because they were both co-chairs. But Blue Ivy looked amazing, knocked it out of the park. I was just so happy to see them wearing their outfits, looking amazing. I absolutely really, really loved this. And of course, last of the night, Rihanna in custom Maison Margiela. I saw on Vogue that this look was drawing reference from the artisanal 2025 collection. The column gown silhouette is founded in the medieval architecture and atmosphere of Flanders, with the constructive drape reflecting the painting of Flemish primitives. Also, her hair and makeup, incredible. If you haven't guessed by now, the glam that I did for today's recording is inspired by Rihanna's Met Gala glam. Of course, I didn't do a perfect recreation, but I've got some gems on my face. I did the gold eyeshadow with a little bit of the almost light purple highlight under the brow bone and on my cheek. I'm wearing a Fenty lip gloss, of course, as an ode to her. And also A$AP Rocky looked great too. Thank you. There are a couple of few people who are really like carrying all of the men on their backs. And ASAP Rocky, I think, is always one of them. And I did write down a very quick list of names who were not at the gala this year, but who I think would have not only understood this theme, but really crushed their interpretations of it. And that list is Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, Taylor Swift, Chappell Roan, Meryl Streep, Zendaya, Bella Hadid, and Lana Del Rey. And just as a kind of quick rapid fire, as some people who I think were both on theme and who looked super stylish: Emma Chamberlain, Angela Bassett, Venus Williams, Rihanna, Beyonce, Sabrina Carpenter. Some people who I think were technically on theme, but maybe not my favorite looks from the night: Lauren Sanchez Bezos, Lena Dunham, Cardi B, SZA. Some people who I think kind of ignored the theme and didn't really tap into the theme, but looked great: Nicole Kidman, Zoe Kravitz, Doja Cat, Amanda Seyfried, and Sarah Pigeon. And then some people who I think completely ignored the theme, and I would have loved to see them in like almost anything else: Charlie XCX, Margot Robbie, Emily Blunt, Stanley Tucci. I feel like there is even still more to talk about. Madonna had a great red carpet look as well. Stevie Nicks also performed with Sabrina Carpenter inside the Met Gala. There's literally still so much more, but honestly, just breaking down all of these looks, I hope you learned a little bit more about the inspiration behind a lot of them. I hope that you enjoyed hearing my thoughts and commentary on yet another Met Gala. Please let me know what you guys thought of the gala this year. I am still super interested in going to see the exhibition, so I would love to report back to you guys on that once I'm able to see it in person, hopefully soon. And that just about wraps it up. I will talk to you guys all again next week.